Here we go. All right. We are live. Welcome, everyone, to our book study group for Monday, the 20th of June. We are on Board. You Were Born Rich by Bob Proctor, chapters 5 and 6. Should be pretty exciting. Let me go ahead and get rid of that sound. Hold on just a second here. All right, good. I was hearing myself talk on the YouTube thingy. So, anyway, intimate crowd here today, so we'll see who else shows up, but I'm glad you guys are here. Chapters 5 and 6. So chapter 5 is expect an abundance, and chapter 6, the law of vibration and attraction. Two very loaded chapters, I think. I certainly got a lot out of them. And you know what, since it's a small group, I'm just going to run through chapter 5, the highlights that came up for me. And granted, we've been studying this sort of content for, in multiple books. I really do like how conversational and how workable and usable Bob presents it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll see what there is to see here. Things that stuck with me anyway, that I thought were worded differently enough that it was definitely worth highlighting in my world. So expecting an abundance. And in this case, right out of the gate, I was like, yeah, this quote, he likes to start chapters with poems, which I skim over real quick and then forget everything I just read. But this was like, wow, the mind is a powerful magnet, and as such, it attracts whatever corresponds to its ruling state. The word that I use often is its chronic state, right? So like the habitual state. Expectation dictates what that ruling state will be, and therefore governs what corresponds to the mind and is attracted into your life. Expectation can be either a blessing or a curse, but either way, it's certainly one of the most powerful unseen forces in your life. So I remember reading, was it Neville? Probably Neville, right, Missy? Where he was talking about, was it Neville that said, or was it James Allen? That
What?
said, to have a wish without an expectation is futility.
They all said it. Yeah.
They all said, okay, great. So not a new truth here, but what he's talking about here is creating, I think, a habit of expectancy. And he's telling us that each chapter kind of is related. It fits in like a puzzle, which I found the same sort of thing with Napoleon Hill's work. And of course, Bob studied Napoleon Hill more than I have, where it's a complete picture, but you got to kind of put it all together for yourself and see how you can make it work. So nice reminder here that, and he repeats himself, there never is and never has been any lack of supply other than that which we have created for ourselves because of our own limited awareness. So was this the chapter where he talked about the light bulbs?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. So here is this omniscience, this all, potentiality. And then here is me. And, how much have I developed my own conscious awareness of my own abilities and the unlimited supply, conscious awareness of unlimited supply, which is all around me. Later, I think it's in the next chapter, he talks about how there's actually nothing to attain, that you already are. Now, that's kind of like a pretty lofty concept. And yet I could see for myself that there are plenty of times where I've entertained thoughts of lack, which is not the expectant, dominant state in the mind that we're looking for. And so here is a way for Mr. and Mrs. Reader to build the case that you can and should expect. I mean, if the stuff isn't limited, well, then you've got full license to expect that, it's the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom, pressed down and running over and all that stuff, right? So I thought this was interesting. We never grasp the simple truth that all we need to do to improve our results is to plug a larger, more prosperous idea into the infinite current of life. Instead, most of us strangle our supply with energy impoverished thoughts. I love that. Energy impoverished. It's kind of like another phrase I like, spiritually bankrupt thoughts of doubt and fear, which entirely cut off the inflow of prosperity. Entirely cut off. the inflow of prosperity. So for a time, right, I was thinking about, like, if you walked into a room and you postulated that it was well lit and you turned on the light switch, but then turn it off again, and then turn it on, and then turn it off, right? That's how it seems to me. It's kind of like this, we'll make a decision already. Are we going for it? Or, are you like, co-creator? Are you a bum? Like, which one is it? And have we all seen this in our own lives?
That's our bad habits doing that.
Yeah.
We know what we want, but we're not doing what we know we should do.
Well, we can just stop touching the light switch.
But sounds easy.
If your desire is not combined with the expectation you will receive what you desire, you will find yourself continually frustrated and disappointed whenever you begin working toward any kind of material goal. So this is it. This is you could be busy and you could have the best of intentions, right? Pave the road with the best of intentions. And yet, if we're not expectant, right? Like that childlike confidence, kind of going back. So here's where he's talking about the different parts fitting together. In the chapter, Let Go and Let God, right? So there's that faith, that confidence. But if we just, keep rearranging seats on the deck of the Titanic, right? Without like some transformative, faith and idea in something bigger, well, it can be pretty frustrating. What else did I highlight in this chapter? You don't just believe that your image of material wealth will manifest in form, but you actually know it will. This is a stage of mental development. So we've talked about this before, like a gradient scale of knowing. At the bottom would be apathy. At the top would be total bliss and enlightenment. Okay. And then you got hope and belief and knowing, right? So there is, right? He just said it here. You don't just believe, you know. You know it. Just like the sky is blue, I know. Although
it was blue.
Well, yeah, with this friggin' storms that have been rolling in here, it's blue, it's gray, it's dark gray, it's light gray.
I'm referring to chemtrails. That's right.
So the truth is not always in the appearance of things. A throwback to Wallace Wattles, right? To think truth regardless of appearances is laborious, but you need to do it. Now, remember, as you think, so you are. So are you. Does not mean as you tell people you think, or as you would wish the world to believe you think. It means your innermost thoughts, which are, like you said, the dominant or, the prime, expectancy or non-expectancy, which only you control, know the truth. That is what you expect. So that is what you attract. And that is what you ultimately receive, which kind of brings us into the next chapter on attraction and vibration. So here you do. Here's what you do. All right. So keep visualizing yourself as a perfectly endowed spiritual instrument without limitations of any kind. Keep visualizing yourself as that. For if you do, you will find it easy, in fact, natural, to expect the good you desire. So he laid out the instructions. There it is. And here's all the justifying your doubt to yourself by originating reasons for it, rationalizing, will do you absolutely no good. There's no bargaining here. There's no sense of fairness. There's no sense of humor with the programming that you allow yourself to reside in. The instant you become aware, you are entertaining thoughts which create doubt. Become quiet, start relaxing and image yourself already in possession of the prosperity you desire. So these are the instructions now on how to do this. Again, and we've quoted Paul before, but these things of good report. Think on these things. This is the idea of praying without ceasing. So as soon as I start to forget and I start entertaining doubts, I got to put my attention back on where I'm going. Haul out the goal statement, the affirmations, the autosuggestive reminders. Do what you got to do to keep yourself on the path. There are 3 certain steps for achieving prosperity in all areas of life. Number 1, build the image in your mind. Number 2, turn it over to spirit. Let go and let God. Number 3, expect with your heart and soul that spirit will reward you openly for your faith. The end of chapter, right? So, I mean, he's just like, do it. I think I mentioned to you guys last week that there was a seminar I was in where Bob refused to even listen to people who were offering ideas of doubt. Like, what? Can't hear you anymore. Heard everything else you said, fine. But as soon as you said but and then blah, 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 what? So I see successful people in that way. Like I can interpret, I don't know if you guys have seen this, because we're talking about creating expectation, right? I've seen where successful people, in some cases, that may not have been the best communicators, but still they were doing this deliberately, where they would extricate themselves from social situations where the kibitzing that was happening in there got unresourceful. They would make their departure. Hey, I got to go. And I've noticed, and this is for myself, but I noticed that while I've been sometimes people have cited that I can tend to be quiet, like in public. Like we were having a JLSM live event in Las Vegas, and we were having a steak dinner, and people were talking about this and that, and I didn't say a whole lot. I listened a lot. Okay, so does that mean, like, should I like introvert on that? Like, oh, I need to, say something or whatever. No, I think that a lot of times you're going to find that yourself, let's bring this down to personal experience. When you're in the flow and you're expectant and you find yourself around, let's say, people who aren't on that same track, okay, or even worse, like naysayers and stuff like that, you don't go as often, you don't stay as long. Does that make sense to anybody? Like we're closing our minds to these counter postulates, these doubtful ideas. What do you guys think about this? How do you create an expectation for yourself? And have you done this? So what did you guys get out of this chapter? Missy, thanks for volunteering.
Okay. Well, I do it the Neville Goddard way, and this way. Neville Goddard doesn't like the breakdown of the conscious and the subconscious, and he doesn't care about that. And if you know his family story, they did it all through the mind. They didn't worry about, well, now I've got to tell my subconscious this. It doesn't really matter, but I have gotten, well, in 2019, I got to such extreme ability at that I had a vision while I was awake of my dead parents coming to me and telling me something incredible. And I've never doubted for a minute that it was true, it was real, because I was awake, I wasn't asleep, I was getting ready to watch The Housewives, still watched that was before the election, I was still watching TV back then.
Oh, right.
And Bob wasn't here, I was wide awake. I was on an incredibly high level with that. It was like I was seeing a vision in front of me. The rest of the time, with having diagnoses, let's put it that way, I identify it as the diagnosis. And it's like being on an elevator. We want to go up, right? But so why don't we push the buttons? I mean, have you ever seen Bob Proctor when he says, when he was a kid, his mother said, Bob, why'd you do that? I don't know. You know better, don't you? Yeah. Why'd you do that? I don't know. Then he got to school, the same thing. Then he gets to the Navy. Proctor, yes, sir. Why'd you do that? I don't know. You know better, right? Yes. It's the habits. The habits prevent us from, we want to press the button so badly. So we have to break the frame of our old, useless, dangerous habits that want us to fail. They're almost like entities in my mind. They don't want to give up their grip on us. And he gives us every single, like you said, what did you call it? The blueprint or something? You called it something. The instruction. He gives us an instruction manual. If we'll just follow it. Napoleon Hill uses the word faith more than expectancy. We got to have that faith. Faith is knowing that it is. We know the sun comes out above the chemtrails. We know it. We know Christmas comes on December 25th. We don't have to guess at these things. We don't have to ponder it. Does it? Will it? I don't know. Just have the faith. And I have my problems too, but I know what to do. I know what to do, and I'm working really diligently. My husband is helping me. All you guys are helping me. My partners, Linda and Lindsay, are helping me. And it's wonderful when you're there, but sometimes I'm just standing on that elevator. Why isn't it rising to the top? I told it to rise. You have to press the button. And this book is the instruction manual on how to get to the different floors. So I know I babbled, but I'm sorry.
No, that's just beautiful. Beautiful babbling. Thank you. Bob departed though. That's
Because the cat is made him go
Oh,
do.
okay. All right, good stuff. Catherine, Daisy, Janet, Lindsay, any thoughts on expectancy? The mindset of expectation. Catherine.
Yeah, this was really timely for me. We just put our house on the market last week.
Right.
So I've been kind of doing it was Neville Goddard, right? With the imagining the sold sign in the front yard.
Oh, yeah, he
So I've
definitely
been
had one of the
picturing that.
stories, yeah, in the Neville book that we read 6 months ago or whatever it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
that's what I've been doing all day. We had our first showing today, so I've just been imagining that sold sign, and
Right. Now
I want
on
this done fast.
in terms of real estate in your area, is it like, total insanity, bidding wars and all that kind of stuff that's going on, like here in Florida?
Still, yeah, it's
Yeah.
still really bad. I
Hmm.
mean, it's the prices of houses have doubled, if not more, in the last year. So
Unreal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I guess that's good for the seller, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm also confident that you're going to get a fine offer. Yeah. So
And it will free up my time for other things. So
there you go.
I'm good with this. I'm happy with it.
There you go. Hey, what other things do you guys want to create expectation on? So this would be a good thing to kind of like, just like writing out your goals, but like if you've done so, can you drill down to like the little details of what it's going to be like to actually have it? Now he talked about this in a previous chapter, I think he did, but it's one of the ways to beef up and to get more empowering emotions out of your goals is to picture yourself like in the conversations you'll be having. Like if you really expect to reach this goal, what are your interactions going to be like with your spouse, your coworkers, your whatever? There was a story just on the topic of expectation. I don't see any other open mics right now, but there was a story, and I'm sure Bob would know who I'm referring to here, but there was this group of people going through the desert and they needed rain. And so the leader said, go pray to your God for rain. And then he goes away and he comes back and they say, oh, God has forsaken us. It has not rained. And the leader said, oh, well, where's the ditches? If you expected it to rain, you would have dug the ditches. Anybody know who that was?
I think it was the prophet Elias in the Old Testament.
There you go. There you go. Right. Thank you. So are you digging the ditches? If I expect to have, this prosperity, this abundance, this achievement, let's say, well, what are the byproducts of that? Can we actually make that more real for us in present time? And if you've had a tendency to think negatively, I used this one before in seminars where I said, okay, so you want to make this much money. Let's say you want to turn your annual income into a monthly income, and you tend to think negatively. Okay, well, here you go. Here's an idea. Start, thinking about what your tax bill is going to look like. You want to think negatively. There you go. Ahead. So now you just, 10x your income. Visualize yourself paying your taxes. How's that sound? I mean, it's one of the details that'll come up, right? You like to talk about problems? There you go. So interesting little psychology that we can do there. But, make it real. Make it real for yourself. Any other thoughts on this chapter on expectation? Expecting prosperity. Expecting.
Sorry,
Yes.
I'm late. He says, don't just believe it, but know it.
Mhm.
Know it. And I think that's I love the digging the ditch thing.
Yeah.
I mean, what about building a boat when there's no sign of rain for days, building an ark because you were told to, and you expect it to happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Beautiful. That's beautiful, right? So you wouldn't build the ark if you weren't expecting a flood. So where have we lied to ourselves, or like you talked about that frustrating thing where you do the labor over here, but you without expectancy, and you get frustrated. So where could we put our attention if we're really expecting it? This kind of correlates with Janet. Are you familiar with the vacuum law of prosperity that Bob would talk about quite often?
I don't think so.
So he
Maybe, but I
said.
don't
So
recall.
he said that, let's say, for example, you wanted a grand piano. Well, where are you going to put it? Well, you
Right.
need to go ahead and clear that area of the house, right? In the room for the placement of the piano. I mean, if you're expecting to get the piano, well, then there's the place where it's going to go.
Right.
Right.
That's digging the ditch.
Right. Right. And creating a vacuum. The vacuums don't stay empty for very long. Okay. So that piano is going to show up. What if you expecting to hire the right employee, right? Well, go ahead and, create the desk, put the phone, right? Pencils, whatever, right? Like actually create the space for that employee. And then somebody's going to end up in that seat. It's going to happen. But you wouldn't set up the desk if you weren't expecting to find the employee. So this is how I think we can kind of tiptoe and like half measure our way into frustration if we aren't like all in with that. I'm going to go ahead and clean out that that area of the house to put the piano.
Yeah, really good. That acorn needs a place to grow.
There you go. Which is bringing us right into chapter 6. So well done on that, because he talked about acorns. So let's go ahead and talk about that. Here we go. Chapter 6. The law of vibration and attraction. And of course, law of attraction is a term that's been kicked around a bunch. As you know, Proctor was invited to speak in the Secret movie, right? The Secret. And so it's all about law of attraction kind of stuff, which is part of the story. Okay. But here he qualifies it as the law of vibration and attraction. Now, this book came out long before The Secret. And there's a piece of poetry. Very nice. Okay, great. So something that Werner von Braun was talking about, as if you guys read the book, this guy was kind of like the godfather of the space program. And they said here, though, out of all the science and stuff, he was comparing science and religion. Okay, but this really hit me. And I think I'd love to hear what you guys think about this. By employing the tools of science, man attempts to harness the forces of nature, which surround him. Through religion, on the other hand, he endeavors to control the forces of nature, quote, which are at work within him. So around him versus in him or her. After a brief pause, he added, there would not be a single great accomplishment in the history of mankind without faith. Any person who strives to accomplish something needs a degree of faith in himself. And when he takes on a challenge that requires more and more moral strength than he can muster, he needs faith in God. So, okay, so let's just break this down for a minute. I want to park on this for a second here. So we've got science and religion, which a lot of people have felt are antithetical. He's like, no, they cooperate very nicely. So here is the study of how things work out there, right? Electricity and mechanical, physics, right? Nice, right? Let's work with what we've got. We've got stuff here. It's called planet Earth. We're going to work with it. We're going to see how this stuff actually works. Let's do some science. All right. But then we get into the internal operations, right? That which is unseen. And certainly we can talk about, quantum physics and unseen, particles. Okay. But now we're getting into something that we're talking about who we actually are, talking about spirit. And so in this case, we are working with, as a triune being, right? Body, mind, spirit, right? We're working with that which is even interested in science. And in a larger sense, that which preceded science. In other words, the truth is prior to my thoughts about it. So I've got to be, and we've talked about this many times. I've got to be like in present time, present, right? And in that state of expectancy or faith, or we could just say an elevated emotional state, and then I can do better science. My doing this, my hands-on machinery is more workable when the right guy is showing up. To me, that's hugely profound, and it's just other words to point to the same question that comes up for me again and again, is who's doing it? Which John is showing up here today? And certainly faith in myself and my abilities, but if I am not pushing it to, considerable heights, then I guess I could just sit here and, do the John thing. But we get to a point where, more strength than I can even muster. Well, now I've got to look higher. To me, that's huge. Anybody else get anything out of that paragraph?
First thing that I thought of was Sir Isaac Newton,
Mm-hmm.
who up until Einstein was the physicist. He was the prince of physicists. And Newton actually wrote more about theology than he wrote about science.
Mm-hmm.
And he always felt himself to be in the presence of the creator. And every discovery that he made, the laws of motion, optics, you name it, the calculus, it was all for him a manifestation of the wisdom of God. And he probably more than anyone, being perceived as a man of science, knew that there was no conflict between science and religion, that the two actually are complementary.
Great.
Can I just say, to me, throughout history, only the bravest are brave enough to show proof of faith. Noah built that ark. Didn't it take him like 20 years or something?
Longer than that.
Longer than that. And everybody was laughing at him until the rain started. The Wright brothers didn't discover flight. They didn't create it. I mean, they discovered it. They didn't create it or invent it. They kept up, and they were made fun of too. But they kept at it, and they worked with the laws of nature. That's the only way you can make these great leaps. And we could do the same thing inside with our own selves. We can discover the things around us and make new ways of doing things. But the biggest journey is inside. But we are afraid to show proof of faith because we're afraid of what people are going to say. And that is what holds most of mankind back. But in this group, I think we're made of something else, or we're longing to find that part of ourselves that is made of something else, because we all are made of something else. And we just have to, we have to let go and let God, but we have to let ourselves go, because we're pulling ourselves back every time we want to do something for fear of showing that proof of faith, and it doesn't manifest right at that moment. And then, who's going to say what, but
Right. What will they think? Yeah. So faith as a concept includes faith in yourself and faith in that higher power. So, but as Bob was just saying, it's not antithetical. Kind of like Bob mentioned, the colors of the rainbow. Like, here's the spectrum. All right, well, where does that hue, stop and this one start? It's not like there's lines of demarcation there. So he's getting into vibration and attraction here. If we go back to the text, says here, from the most ethereal to the most gross form of matter, everything is in a constant state of vibration. Okay, and rates of vibration, called frequencies, the higher the frequency, the more potent the force. Since thought is one of the highest forms of vibration, it is very potent in nature, and therefore it must be understood by all of us. So back to the idea of rearranging chairs on the Titanic, okay, to what end, right? So if I'm just working with gross, matter, rocks, stuff, and not giving, attention to who's doing it and higher thought and the energy that animates all of it, then I'm only looking at a piece of the rainbow, so to speak. So what we've got to do then is develop ourselves. And this is where I think a lot of times people have, let's say, for example, in a business training environment, I want to learn the mechanics of email marketing or whatever, and all the nuts and bolts, how-to stuff. Nice, secondary to who's doing it. Okay. So yes, learn the science, but develop yourself. I think it was the late Jim Rohn who said, work twice as hard on yourself as you do on your business. So we're talking about the same energy here, that there's no line of demarcation. It's the same energy that's constantly in a state of vibration. So he mentions how actual inertia isn't right. Everything's moving, even like the corpse, right? It's moving always, right? Constant motion. So now he's talking about different kinds of people, the negative and positive. And I thought these two lines were interesting because it really just summed it up. There are, so here's he's talking about a positive person. They are in a positive vibration and therefore attract other positive personalities to them. Resonance, harmonious vibration. Negative personalities, due to the negative vibration, which they keep themselves in, they of course attract other miserable personalities to them. We've all heard the saying, misery loves company. So as James Allen said, in life, you don't get what you want, you get who you are. Now, here's the question for everybody. Does that happen instantaneously? So the fact that, I may have been, negative, chronically dominant mental state of, pessimism and whatever, I had a spiritual awakening and now suddenly, I'm surrounded with, allies. Well, there's another law called the law of gender, which states that every seed has a gestation or incubation period, right? So he was talking in this chapter about the acorn, right? So the fact that you take the acorn and it's suddenly in the environment in which it can prosper, it starts to attract all those other, elements to it in a microscopic form, right? I mean, you don't see the water moisture going, through the dirt to get to the acorn. But we know intellectually, because we've seen it 10 billion times, right? We know that it is happening, but there's a gestation period for that. Back to the idea of faith and what he said before, like these are pieces of a puzzle. These chapters work together. So can we hold that positive vibration, and can we shut our minds to those negative influences that keep turning off our light switch? We damn well better. Okay, because it says here, you do have free will. You can choose which of these two personality types you wish to adopt. Therefore, if a person is constantly negative but tires of that state, the person may, through awareness and proper effort, change himself into a positive personality type of individual. Understand this: the law of vibration will give people the awareness they require to make the personality changes they require. How does it do that? How does it do that? Well, how do you feel? What is feeling? It's conscious awareness of the vibration that you're in. So the law of vibration will give people the awareness, going down the wrong road, right? I mean, you can feel it. And we can develop this to the point where I'm sure we've all had hunches, right? Where you just know that's not the right path for me or whatever, right? You can get in tune with this. I think a lot of times people shut this off because intellectually they're supposed to, be very reasonable or something. But we develop this to the point where we can get pretty intuitive about stuff. And before we go too far down, let's say, a negative path, we could correct course. Now, I think it's coming up here in the chapter. Here we go. Back to the idea of work without expectation. It is unfortunately a very common sight to see people in a bad or confused vibrations, busily attempting through force to achieve good results. So force doesn't work. But where is it in this chapter where he talked about? All right, there's a point where he talks about how when we get in resonance with something, that thing comes to us and we accept it and it stops with us. But if we're not in resonance with it, it can keep going. It bounces off of us. It was in this chapter. I know I got it highlighted in here somewhere, but the two objects under discussion are composed of entirely different material. Here he's talking about, you have a certain note, let's say, of music that's playing in the room, and then, the globe on the ceiling fan resonates, right? It rings because they're in resonance. They're two objects, totally different, made of different stuff, and yet they have completely different shapes. Still, they are in resonance with one another due to the fact that their ultimate magnetic fields are the same. So not to get too deep into electromagnetic fields and all that, but you've got same thing with any radio, right? You've got a certain frequency. And I don't know if you guys know this. I'm a licensed ham radio operator, so I do, but there are different lengths of antenna that will attract and receive different frequencies, better or worse than others. It's actually based on the actual length of the antenna. And now we're getting into electromagnetic wavelengths and stuff like that. But wrong size antenna, you cannot receive those frequencies. All right. And that's why people who are really into this, they got like multiple antennas, like antenna arrays and stuff going all over the place. I'm not that into it. Okay. But resonance. This is a huge thing. And I think this is where we go here. Okay, so you two are connected to everything in the universe, right? So back to that idea that there's no line of demarcation in the spectrum, okay? Whether you can see it with the naked eye or not is not important, okay? The only physical difference which exists between one thing and another relates to the density or the amplitude of their vibration. So let me just clear this up. If you guys were talking about frequencies, right? So a frequency would be the number of oscillations over a period of time, right? That's in electrical terms, that's measured in hertz. Okay. And then, kilohertz, megahertz, right? Gigahertz. So that would be frequency. What he's talking about here is amplitude. Amplitude. So you could have the same frequency with a small amplitude, and you could have the same frequency with a high amplitude. Bam, 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 bam. Louder. Think of like an amplifier. Okay. So here's the sounds that exist, and they're very quiet. Okay. And then you amplify them and you can, hear them far and wide. So amplitude is what he's also introducing in this chapter. You got both frequency and amplitude. Therefore, as soon as you choose certain thoughts, your brain cells are affected. These cells vibrate and send off electromagnetic waves. When you concentrate on those thoughts, you increase the amplitude of vibration of those cells, and the electric waves in turn become much more potent. So he's giving us, again, an admonition to focus on this stuff, concentrate on this stuff. Don't let it be a fleeting thought. Yeah, it was a nice frequency. That's nice. Amplitude is what we're looking for. Full throttle, in other words. You are a veritable broadcasting station. relative to other people. And I think here's where we're getting into it. Here it is. Whenever you get near enough to them to enter into their sphere of vibration, so here comes a person, negative or positive, either way, you will be affected by that vibration, whether you realize it or not. Have you ever noticed, for example, how peaceful you feel, vibrate, when you're walking alone in the woods or on the beach, or in the desert or whatever you like to do? Here it says, as soon as a person starts to think, he starts brain cells vibrating. Energy is released, therefore, in the form of electrons, which travel out according to the intensity of the thought involved. Whoever, this is the line I was looking for. This is the line. Whoever stops that energy is affected by it. But bear in mind, the only thing which stops a thought is that which resonates with that thought. Bam. Okay. So here comes Lindsay. Here comes my thought of goodwill towards you. And you're in resonance with that, and you receive that cause point, receipt point, right? Complete communication. What if, okay, here's an example, guys. What if someone is complaining about something to you, which you had nothing to do with it. They're just a complainer. And you're just not in resonance with that. I'm on a different frequency. I'm doing the thing over here, right? And does that affect you? In other words, did you receive that? No, it didn't. It went here, it went there. It missed you. This is why we've got to be in the right vibration all the time. Because look, there are so many influences impinging upon you all day, every day, whether you know it or not, like you said in the previous paragraph. What frequency are you operating on? And this is why in the seminar, Bob wouldn't even hear the guy who was given buts and justifications and whatever. Can't hear it. It doesn't stop here. The buck doesn't stop here. So everything you're seeking is seeking you in return. Therefore, everything you want is already yours. So you don't have to get anything. It's simply a matter of becoming more aware of what you already possess. So that now we're getting pretty lofty. Okay, but the idea that all we got to do is become consciously aware that these frequencies exist, and now I'm going to get on those frequencies. And then everything else is added to you, right? Reminded me of the Bible quote, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and then all these will be added to you. Did I say that right, Bob? I know you're a bit of a scholar, Bible scholar there.
Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his justice,
And it's
and
just
all also be given unto you.
there
Yes.
you go. There you go. So get on that higher vibration. Now you're either creating or disintegrate. Therefore, it follows that if something is not in the process of growing, it must, by the law of its being, be dying. Another argument for being on the upward spiral, right? These things of good report. Think on these things. Because the alternative isn't to sit there and be stopped. No, stopped is death. You're disintegrating. Like the acorn, you're also a seed relative to the whole scheme of things. However, the difference between you and the acorn is that since you are a co-creator, you can choose your own programming. The acorn can't. So we've been given dominion, right? And we've got all these mental faculties, man. I can like think and stuff and make decisions. That's wow. What an opportunity, which I can squander. I've squandered opportunities. Sure, I have. Okay, but this is the opportunity that we have. So you must remember, though, if your image is continually fluctuating, lights on, lights off, you will continually be growing into something different, and that sets in motion a most chaotic process. So I heard Bob talk about law, right? Because he's talking about law of vibration and attraction, and Bob defined law as the orderly movement of the omnipotent God. That was his favorite definition for law. The orderly movement of, we could say, omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence, right? And so in this way, if we're creating disorder, in other words, if we're undecided oscillating, this vibration, that vibration, and all this. Well, that's chaos. That's not order. That's not working with the law. And here's Bob's coaching program, which I guess Gallagher is running right now. And that's the end of that chapter for me. Did anything in here hit a nerve with any of you guys?
Several nerves, lots of stuff came up that I have from both experience and education, got reinforced. The whole idea of the personal vibration, and many of you may have seen, it's a meme. It appears, it's a very, very famous picture of Einstein. And he's sitting in this sort of position, or maybe this sort of position, his hands are clasped in front of him. And he said, it's simple physics. The frequency that you give out is the frequency you get in return. And we're all pretty much like a radio, that you can set the radio to whatever frequency you want, and the frequency that you get back will play salsa or classical or hip hop or rap or all news all the time. It really depends on where you set your frequency. What you want, you set the frequency for. It's that simple. That was the first thing. Also, the analogy that he had borrowed from Raymond Hollowell, the acorn, how it acts according to a specific law. From my education, it stirred up, the generation of one thing requires the corruption of something else. Now think about that. That's something really we should chew on. If you're going to create something, something else has to be destroyed. If you're going to make a table, you have to cut down a tree. And at a certain point, you whittle down that tree, you fashion it, and it becomes a table over time. But as it's going through those stages are alternately created and then destroyed until finally you have the finished product. So we are all living in a state of perpetual creation and destruction, which reminds me of my favorite, one of my favorite economists, Schumpeter, who said, what is capitalism? Capitalism is creative destruction. It's drawing out from what has been destroyed and creating something new. I have been reading, among several books, this one called Taking the Quantum Leap.
That's my book.
She's had it for 40 years, right? Since the 1980s.
Yes.
I'm an indiscreet age revealer by that.
I was a fetus at that time.
Anyway, but I recommend it. Because on the top it says the new physics for non-scientists. For the first 200 pages or so, it's very, very readable. But then when he starts getting into the world of the very, very small, we see that things are not as deterministic as they appear. And it's very interesting, as more of a student of history than a student of science, I loved reading about these great physicists of the 19th and 20th centuries kind of going at it hammer and tongs. Einstein, who famously said, God does not play dice with the universe. And Heisenberg and Bohr on the other side, talking about, well, there is a randomness when you get down in the uncertainty of things. It really is very compelling. And it's a challenging read, but it's a very educational read. I do recommend it very highly. And it's a very entertaining writer, Fred Allen Wolf. But it all goes around the notion of vibration. What really set physics on its ear was, what is light? They're trying to define what light was.
Oh, yeah.
Is it a wave or is it a particle? And the answer is, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But for ourselves, Neville Goddard, I'm sorry, he said, you said destruction and creation. We have to die to the person we were to become the highest frequency that we possibly can. We have to die. We have to let go of that other person. We have to die, right, Lindsay? We have to die to that person. And it's really not as dramatic as it sounds. It's not. So maybe some people can do it like that. Maybe some people can.
But isn't that the tale of Scrooge? All right.
Yes.
Prior to his visitations, he was vibrating at a very, very low level, a very negative level. He was a miser. He wanted to hang on to what he had, and he was actually miserable. He lived in nothing better than a hovel. Okay, but he had all the money in the world. He thought that was going to make him happy. It didn't. And again, recommending things: The Christmas Carol, the movie, Alistair Sim, the classic, the definitive. Alistair Sim changed. When he woke up on Christmas morning, he was as giddy as a little boy. And you could just see he had been turned. But all through the night, when he was visited by each one of them, he said, I'm too old. I'm beyond redemption. Do it for somebody else. But he realized finally, I'm not too old. I'm not beyond redemption. I can change. I can change my vibration. And it's a joyous ending to see how he transformed himself simply by transforming his outlook on life.
Even I can do it.
Even Missy. There's hope for us all, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm doing it. Believe me, I'm doing it. He's not having as quick success as Scrooge.
Yeah. Janet, Catherine, did you have a comment on this?
No, but I'm thinking actually quite literally. And sometimes to raise our own personal vibration, there's thinking, but there's doing. Why is the chanting and the humming and the singing and all of that kind of thing, the dancing gets things flowing? If things are stuck, if we feel a little bit, get it moving, get the flow going. So I'm being quite literal in this case, but yeah, I think we can just, if we're not feeling it, we can feel it. We can get ourselves in the feeling of it. And I think that can be a joyous thing, to feel that joy and to, then you'll feel joyful in all kinds of places.
Yeah, motion and emotion are connected, as you see. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Push-ups, burpees, jumping jacks.
You do it, I'll watch.
Right. Anybody else tonight? From chapter 6. Well, I got some great reminders out of it, and I always like to see, why stuff works, and the fact that he was bringing up science and amplitude, and I'm like, this makes sense. I think the thing that stuck with me most is that I can only receive that frequency if I'm in resonance with it, just like the antenna. All right, got to have the right frequencies. My friends, we're going to cover 2 more chapters next week, 7 and 8, right? And then we got 1 more week after that, chapters 9 and 10, and that's the end of the book. I am open to ideas on our next book. We got a couple more weeks. So, was that?
The Power of Awareness.
Who wrote that?
Neville.
Goddard.
Another Neville book? Okay.
How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, Dale Carnegie.
Okay. I'll take these into consideration. That's very good.
Don't you want to come into your skull again? It's very different book.
Okay. Good. Well, let's get back here next week. Read 2 more chapters. Okay. In fact, read the whole book, but read 2 more chapters, and we'll see you back here in 1 week's time. Thank you guys for being here. Daisy, good to see you. Lindsay, Janet, Catherine, Bob, Missy. You guys have a great night.